Welcome to CRJ 112. This week we're taking a look at Chapter 6, which explores social structure theory. And according to social structure theory, the root cause of crime is the different socioeconomic disadvantages that really have become embedded in our society. That people in the lower class are driven to sometimes desperate measures, such as crime and substance abuse, to cope with their economic situation. Now, criminologists who view membership in a disadvantaged economic class as a primary cause of crime are referred to as social structure theorists. Again, they suggest that social and economic forces operating in deteriorated lower class areas may push many of the residents into crime. So it views the existence of gangs, high crime, and social disorder in poor inner city areas as major social problems. And there's really three independent yet overlapping branches. The first is social disorganization theory, the second is strain theory, and the third is cultural deviance theory. Now, when we look at social disorganization theory, it focuses on the urban conditions that affect crime rates. In other words, it looks at crime occurring in disorganized areas where institutions of social control, such as families and schools, have really broken down and are not able to any longer perform their expected or stated functions. Some indicators of social disorganization include high unemployment, high school dropout rates, deteriorated housing, high low income levels, and large numbers of single-parent households. And residents in those areas tend to experience conflict and despair, and then as a result, there's certain antisocial or criminal behavior that starts to occur. Now, Clifford Shaw and Henry McKay, they helped explain crime delinquency within the context of the changing urban environment and then the ecological development of the city. And they looked at poverty-ridden transitional neighborhoods that suffered higher rates of population turnover and really can't convince people to stay in the neighborhood, to take ownership and help protect the neighborhood from criminals. And so these different values that come up with young people in those areas, they often conflict with existing middle-class norms, which, those norms demand strict obedience to the legal code. As a result, there's this value conflict that further separates delinquent youths and their peer groups from conventional society, and this results in a more solid embrace of those deviant goals and behavior. Now, according to the social ecology school, crime rates and the need for police are really associated with this deterioration, which includes disorder, poverty, feeling of alienation and dissociation, and a fear of crime. So in larger cities, neighborhoods that have many abandoned or deserted homes and apartments experience higher crime rates. And as fear increases, the quality of life deteriorates. And it's kind of a cycle that occurs here. Now, people who live in neighborhoods that experience high levels of crime and civil disorder become suspicious, start distrusting authorities, and may develop what's called a siege mentality. In other words, they consider the outside world an enemy that really is trying to destroy their neighborhood. So as those areas decline, residents relocate to safer, more stable neighborhoods. Now, cohesive communities develop what's called collective efficacy. There's a mutual trust, a willingness to intervene in supervising others' children and maintaining public order. In other words, they tend to police themselves fairly well. Now, some elements of collective efficacy operate on the primary or private level and involve peers, families, and relatives. Now, communities that have collective efficacy attempt to use their local institutions to control crime. So stable neighborhoods are also able to arrange for external sources of social control. Now, strain theorists argue that although people in all social classes share similar social and economic goals, the ability to obtain those goals depends on what social class they're in. Many people in the United States desire wealth, material possession, power, prestige, and other comforts, but members of the lower class are maybe not able to obtain those through conventional means, so they may feel anger, frustration, and resentment. And those feelings together are looked at as causing strain. Now, sociologist Robert Merton argued that legitimate means to acquire wealth was really stratified across class and status lines. In other words, some people have inadequate means of attaining success, and then others who have the means really reject societal goals. Now, to resolve the goals-means conflict and relieve this sense of strain, some people conform to societal goals, while others adapt in other ways. They may innovate by stealing or extorting money. They may retreat into drugs and alcohol. They may rebel by joining revolutionary groups. And still others may get involved in ritualistic behavior by joining something like a religious cult. Now, Stephen Messner and Richard Rosenfeld's updated version of Merton's work, which is what we call institutional enemy theory, he believes that anemic conditions, they kind of develop because there's this desire to succeed at any cost that drives people apart. It weakens this collective efficacy, the sense of community. It fosters ambition, and it really restricts the desire to achieve anything other than material wealth. For example, maybe achieving respect from people is not sufficient anymore. Now, the American dream mythology really kind of helps ensure that many people develop this desire for material possession that can't be satisfied legitimately. So the dominance of economic concerns really weakens the informal social control that's exerted by family, church, and school. And crime rates may even rise in a healthy economy because national prosperity really heightens the attractiveness of this material possession or monetary reward, which then in turn could encourage people to gain financial success by any means necessary, even illegal or illegitimate means. Now, relative deprivation theory, which was proposed by Judith and Peter Blau, believes that lower class people may feel both deprived and embittered when they compare their life to those that are wealthier or more affluent. So they begin to distrust society that has allowed this inequality, and this frustration that builds up may produce certain pent-up aggression and hostility, which could lead to violence and crime. Now, people who perceive themselves as economically deprived relative to others that they know, as well as to society in general, they may begin to form negative self-feelings and hostility, which then may motivate them to engage in these deviant and criminal behaviors. Now, Agnew's general strain theory tries to explain why people who feel stress and strain are likely to commit crimes. And he suggests that criminality is the direct result of certain negative affective states. That the anger, frustration, and adverse emotions that kind of emerge in the wake of these destructive relationships. And he finds that negative affective states are generally produced by a variety of sources of strain, which could include the failure to achieve success, maybe this disjunction of expectations and achievements, which happens when people compare themselves to others who may be doing better. Could also happen through removal of positive stimuli, maybe the loss of a boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, death of a loved one, divorce, or separation of parents. And finally, it could be an application of negative stimuli. There could be child abuse and neglect going on, school failure, other stressful life events. Now, cultural deviance theory combines the elements of both strain and social disorganization theory. It looks at a unique lower-class subculture that has developed in disorganized neighborhoods. Those independent subcultures might maintain unique values and beliefs that conflict with conventional social norms. So criminal behavior is really an expression of conformity to those lower-class subcultural values and traditions, not necessarily a rebellion from conventional society. And these values tend to be handed down from generation to generation in a process that they call cultural transmission. Now, Albert Cohen argues that the delinquent behavior of lower-class youth is really a protest against the norms and values of the middle-class culture. And this happens because social conditions prevent them from legitimately achieving success, and they may experience a form of cultural conflict that he termed status frustration. As a result of this, they join gangs and engage in certain delinquent behavior. Now, Richard Cloward and Lloyd Olin had a theory of differential opportunity that combines strain and social disorganization to really portray a gang-sustained criminal subculture. And according to their theory, people in all social classes share the same success goals. However, those in the lower class have a more limited means of achieving them, and those who see themselves as failures seek alternative or other innovative ways to succeed, which might include gangs and pursuing criminal careers. So they recognize the opportunity for success in both conventional and criminal careers is limited. Really, all opportunities for success, both illegal and conventional, are really closed for the most disadvantaged youth. Now, how has social structure theory affected public policy? Well, we've seen improvement in programs that provide public assistance or welfare. We've seen work to improve community structure in inner city, high crime areas. We also saw the War on Poverty programs start in the early 60s, including Head Start, community action programs. And we've also more recently, probably in the 1980s and continuing through today, seen more community-oriented policing programs. Now, in Chapter 7, we'll take a look at social process theories, which really believe that rather than strictly being a product of their environment and their place in the social structure, most people are shaped by their interactions with social institutions such as schools and with social groups such as family, peers, and neighbors.